Hi, everybody. My name is Zeb Welborn, President and CEO of the Chino Valley Chamber of Commerce. Today, I am here talking with another CEO of another Chino Valley Chamber of Commerce, but also the Prescott Chamber of Commerce. And so, we're going to be chatting today about a couple of things. We're going to be chatting today about the merger. So, Prescott took over the Chino Valley Chamber of Commerce in Arizona. We are the Chino Valley Chamber of Commerce in California. So we get a lot of calls back and forth between the two. We're going to be talking a little bit about foundation work, and then they have this really cool rental assistance program that we'll be talking about too. So Sheri, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. This is exciting.
Well, cool. So yeah, let's get started on the merger. One of the things that in our industry, and we just had a board meeting yesterday where we're talking about some strategic plan and initiative programs, and one of those things that we're discussing is the merging of chambers to better serve their communities. And so I know that this is something that you have tackled, that you just recently have gone through. So I was hoping to pick your brain on that front. So share with me a little bit about how that came about. Actually, before we do that, let's talk about you personally. Give me your brief background and how you got involved in chamber work and how long you've been involved in the chamber industry.
All right. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I've been involved for 30 years. No, it's been a wonderful journey in my career. Really love chamber work. My original background was in hospitality. I worked for a convention bureau, bringing business into the area. And then I was asked to be a chamber president in Michigan. I started off in Michigan. That's where my career started. And this is my third or fourth chamber now, but this is home. And, I have married 4 children, 5 grandchildren, a mini donkey, a mini pony, and we train therapy dogs. So that's just a little bit about me in a nutshell. Could go on about a lot of those things, but, I just love the chamber brand and what chambers stand for and the importance of who we are in a community. And so it's been a great career to raise a family, to be a part of the community, and to make a difference.
That's
So
awesome.
that's just a little brief of what I got going on.
Yeah, no, that's great to hear. So yeah, let's talk about that merger side of things. So how long were you the president and CEO of the Prescott Chamber? And then how long?
So
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, so I relocated from Michigan. I was at the Rochester Regional Chamber for 17 years and moved to Prescott, Arizona for the opportunity. I was actually recruited, and I've been here for 9 years and love it. This is home. This is definitely home. And this area, it's northern Arizona. It's a beautiful area. We're a mile high, similar to Denver, Colorado. And it's a very beautiful community, very rural, very different from coming from a Metro Detroit area. So I've, been here for 9 years, and probably about 5 years ago, we all work together, as you know, as chambers. There's the Prescott Valley Chamber, there's the Prescott Chamber, and there's the Chino Valley Area Chamber of Commerce. And the Chino is kind of our neighboring community that is a little bit smaller, a little bit more rural than where we're at. And they were struggling. They're small businesses and such. And so were invited to meet with them and their leadership. And we've been advising them for the last 3 to 4 years in trying to help them. They purchased a building. It's a beautiful building on the main street and right across from the town area, the town hall. And, they get a lot of support from the town hall and from the businesses, and actually quite a few businesses from the Prescott area, because as you know, businesses that want to thrive want to be part of whatever chamber that makes sense for them to grow their business. And so we were advising them, and we kind of got to a point where both our executive boards met and said, does it make sense for us to work together in a different way? And so actually, it's not, I know you identified it as a merger, but this relationship has been kind of different. what it really is all about is we're the managing company that we manage their operations. So they are still very independent, and they have their own board, they have their own 501c6. We're just here to run the operations of it. And we started June 10th, so it's very fresh for us to be part of the management firm. But it's been going very well. We had a 6-month strategic plan in place on how we can help them. And that's kind of the place that we're at right now.
So I want to talk a little bit about how that process went, because it sounds like you were consulting them for 3 or 4 years. So it sounds like this was a kind of a longer forming relationship where there is some collaboration going there. And then how did it transition from just being a collaborative partner to having those discussions and that dialogue about that? Was it, it sounds like they reached out to you to see if that made sense. Is that how it worked?
Yeah, so basically, they had a part-time employee, and actually, kind of go backwards. When we were advising them, they didn't. It was just a board-run organization. They had lost their executive director. We had a lot of volunteers that were helping, and so one of the things, part of our partnership when we were just kind of advising them, was to we worked with an organization called NACOG that we were able to get training dollars. And so under the Prescott umbrella, we actually hired a staff member to be in the Chino Chamber. And we went through kind of a couple of those positions. And then after the last person kind of gave their notice, not that they were unhappy or anything, just life, a lot of things changing. Our executive board said, how are we going to keep Chino sustainable? And that's when the conversation came up of some kind of partnership. And I will tell you, and you probably have bumped into this, people are very proud. Chino is very proud of their chamber. We're very proud of our chamber. We wanted to do it in a respectful way, in a way that wouldn't threaten anyone or make anybody feel like, hey, the big chamber's coming over and taking over the little chamber. That's not the partnership that we wanted to establish. What we were looking for is an agreement where everybody was agreeable that this made sense. And that's when we came up with the MOU to be the management firm for Chino versus kind of a takeover. So again, it's very separate. I will share with you that both communities are thrilled about it. Our business community has really, everybody feels like we want a champion around this, right? And so it's been very favorable on both ends. And it's a win-win because, we should be working more together. Regionally, it makes sense. And it's just been very positive so far.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I would be curious to know the sentiment on both sides. You see that when you're having that dialogue and discussion, was there any conflict that came out of that? I mean, was it as easy as you're making it sound, putting the two together?
Um, it it was easy. It was easy as it sounded to a certain extent because everybody, we sat at the table together and we talked through why it makes sense. And I think the number one thing was that it was important for me personally to make sure that the chamber brand, is successful. That's why you and I both serve for WACE. We do this because we're proud of running a chamber of commerce. It has such an important role. Both chambers are state designated visitor centers, and one of the number one goals was to keep the doors open here so that we could, have staff here to welcome folks that are coming through the front door here, along with where we're at in Prescott. I think that there's always a little, when you say, was there any controversy? I think sometimes people don't, or, you may get this, it's too good to be true, but it really is sort of scenario. We're really not trying to take over anything. We're trying to enhance and build the brand. And so, we haven't bumped into anything really negative, but I'm sure there's probably those concerns out there that the big chamber's trying to gobble it up. And that's just simply not the case.
Yeah, and then let's talk about the value proposition. Like, what is the value of having that relationship that you guys have put together? Because I've had discussions with some of our other chamber colleagues about what are the things that make it valuable for the way that you have structured it. What's the benefit to both organizations there?
Yeah, so I think the value that I see is working regionally. The other thing, and we've seen this, when you have neighboring communities, it's the same hospital, it's the same energy, like APS, it's the same, we have a lot of similarities and a lot of the same, where they have a second office here. There's a hospital connection here. There's a banking connections. There's all kinds of business connections. So I think we open the door for more networking and more opportunity for both sides. We're starting to see some of our Prescott members wanting to learn more about Chino Valley, and certainly Chino needs Prescott as well for the business aspect of thriving and surviving together. So it's being a convener for both communities, so that we can collectively work together and just be a team, if you will. We're putting on more programming and events to make it more to offer those networking and programmings that businesses need, and I see that as also another value. And also, we bring in an expertise that they haven't had. Now they're gaining a president, event manager. They're gaining expertise that they didn't have before, and it also helps our team learn more how to grow. What does it look like from this perspective? So there's a lot of value in the connectivity and the partnerships.
Yeah, and then was there any concern on your end, just as the CEO and running this stuff? I mean, you mentioned that they were kind of volunteer run, they were struggling a little bit, making sure that's sustainable for your organization to work in and take the time and resources and everything involved in putting that together. Was there any challenges or concerns on your front there?
Well, I think it makes you nervous at first, to think about it. I mean, we know how busy we are with one chamber, and now we have this other chamber that we're taking on, and it's a chamber that we have to rebuild, right? And so I wouldn't have gone forward with this, Zeb, if I wouldn't have had the support of my staff, the team. So I had a lot of conversation with the team and with the board to make sure that everybody was on board with the initiative. So I think for me that's what kept me up at night, if you will, having those conversations, because our organization is only as strong as our team. So making sure that they were bought in and that they felt the same way that I did about supporting the brand. So, I had a lot of deep conversation with the team, a lot of conversation about, should we do this? Does this make sense? And they were behind it. And right now, how it looks is we got both of our visitor centers are staffed by volunteers. And one of the first priorities that we did was to get enough volunteers to help us keep Chino's visitor center open. And the reason for that is when you have the volunteers welcoming our folks in the visitor center and helping those that are looking for things to do, then the staff can focus on connecting with the business community. And that's always been the missing link. And so, we were able to get volunteers into the visitor center. And what we do as a team is we all rotate. We each take a day in Chino. And so far that's worked out well. We've had a few different times when, you have those big events where all hands need to be on deck, but our volunteers stood up. One of the things that's been a pleasant surprise to me is because Chino was run by volunteers, their board of directors is incredible. It's something, in the larger chamber, it's not that we have great board members there, but here it's that pride, and they're in it. They're right alongside of the team, and they're volunteering for all the events and the programming, and they're a lot more hands-on, and it's been very refreshing to be a part of.
And then you mentioned the way you have it structured is there's two different entities. If I'm thinking about this, and you mentioned it, there's businesses that are in both. Is there anything that connects the two in terms of like both of them have their own membership, both of them have their own events, both of them have their own stuff, and they're all completely separate? Or is there any overlapping of things?
Well, because we just started in June, we have kept it separate. So Prescott has its own board, it has its own events, and Chino has its own board and it has its own events. We're trying to figure out a way where, not just for us, but even our neighboring chamber, Prescott Valley, and how can we start doing events all together? Because we do have some events that are regionally put together, and they're hugely and wildly successful, and everybody loves them. And I'll give you, let's just talk about this week, for example. On Tuesday, we had a business after hours. On Wednesday, Prescott Valley had a business after hours. And last night, Prescott had a business after hours. I mean, and we're all like 30 minutes apart, okay? So does that make sense? I mean, let's just think about that from like, does that make sense? Like, shouldn't we all just be having one big event instead of making folks? And there's a lot of people that probably went to all three events. I saw them at the two that we hosted. And I think there'll be a time when we start really looking at that more seriously. But, first we had to really we had to put together the strategic plan. We strengthened that. We wanted to get the visitor center operating. We wanted to get a handle on, who's a member, who's not. There's just a lot that we needed to dive in real quick with. We had to get new computers, operational things. So it's been a really fun journey, and it's been just really cool to kind of watch it unfold.
So when you, in terms of taking this over, I imagine there's a learning curve that happens there, and I think you've mentioned that you've had the opportunity to work at several different chambers, so you've had that experience of walking in and kind of like starting from scratch. But I feel like this is a little bit different because you don't have the amount of time that you would have where you're just jumping in full everything. How was that transition process? How easy was it to get acclimated?
It was, in the beginning, because every chamber has, systems and policies and all of those things. So I think the biggest learning curve for us was, jumping right in and immediately learning that we needed to replace computers and we needed to put in processes. And we used totally two different database systems. And that part is kind of, clunky, and you have to dive in. I had the benefit, Chino uses Chambermaster, Prescott uses a different software. I have been familiar with Chambermaster, so it's like kind of learning those processes. And and you have to be patient, and you have to listen, and you have to understand where they came from and what the history is before you make a total change. So it takes a lot of patience, and we're still learning things. There's things that go on in this community that we've never been a part of. So we're just kind of learning as we go along. We haven't jumped into making any changes because, again, when you jump in and make changes immediately, that makes people nervous. And so what we want to do is honor and respect what's going on, and then just after that, just dive in and start to think, well, where can we enhance? How can we build? And honestly, Zeb, that's how it was when I first started in Prescott. I moved from a very metro, Detroit. I moved from Detroit to Prescott. Initially I'm like, wow, this is totally different. And when you go into those environments, you don't just go in and make the change because this is what you did here, because it may not work. There's a lot of things that are very similar, but not everything. You don't just jump in and make big changes. You listen, you review, and then you observe, and then you enhance.
Yeah, and then I want to pick your brain because this is on how I think about it, like in terms of our community and what we're looking at with some other local organizations is when I'm thinking of like the value that it brings, and you mentioned like grant funding or seeking opportunities and coming from that regional perspective, is there's a lot of in our area, there's a lot of need for collaboration, and there's a lot of incentives for collaboration from people that are providing grants or funding or our local philanthropists. They want to see collaboration, they want to see partnerships and people work together. So that's why I'm kind of saying that the value is there to bring chambers together. And I know in talking with our industry colleagues, they're talking about enhancing the chamber brand where we have chambers that are operating at totally different levels in different areas, and we want to make sure that the overall arching chamber industry looks good for the business community and for the people that we're supporting. Do you have any insight on that? On how am I thinking of that right? Is that a good way that the Chino Valley Chamber was looking at it as well? Give me your insights on that.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think our businesses are actually asking for this. Resources are becoming more and more limited, and they want to have that engagement, but it's not just about sponsoring events anymore. It's about finding programming that will really support the community, and they want to make an impact. And so when you combine what our businesses are telling us versus the programming that we're offering, that's where we really have to listen. And that's where, you kind of hinted to grant writing. That's where a lot of chambers have foundations. Both these chambers have a foundation. The chamber here, their foundation is young. And it's not established, but the one in Prescott is very established. And when you're able to start taking a look at the whole region, what are the needs of the area? How do we address our business needs and what they want to, the initiatives they want to support? That's what I think that you're alluding to, is all of us working together. They want to see that. It's so important. And it just makes sense, if you think about it. I
Yeah.
don't know if I answered your question exactly, but you're right. We need to be working smart. Businesses are trying to work smarter. So do chambers. And what does that look like? It means partnerships. It means listening. It means collaborating. It means going after things that we haven't necessarily looked at before.
Yeah, no, and I know we're going to chat about a couple of those things in a minute, but last question on the merging side of things, and I don't feel like you need to answer this in detail because I know financials are kind of something you want to have some privacy around. But just in terms of like how that looks, is there any insight you can give on how that partnership worked from a financial perspective?
Yeah, so it was kind of tough. That was a real struggle for me personally, just to be honest, because you're working with a group that isn't necessarily thriving, and there were maybe some decisions made that are not necessarily sustainable, and that part needs to be figured out. And, I mean, I'll just share openly that Chino had purchased a building and, they ended up spending way more things had to happen with that investment. And it really made it tough for them. And so we knew that going into it. And then it's like, well, how do you put together a management deal when you know the limitations, right? But we did that. We put together a deal where we are getting compensation and also a percentage of growth. And so, we made it so that that would work, and that's sort of what it looks like for the management agreement. And, not diving into big, what that looks like, but, financially, as far as the number goes, that's what it is. And that was probably one of the hardest things for me, Zeb, because I didn't, I was feeling guilty, because before we were volunteering our time. I volunteered my time for 3 to 4 years to try to help this chamber. And then we were, deciding that it made sense to go into a management agreement. And then now I've got to ask them for money that I know they may or may not have, so that's an interesting dialogue to have.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. And I lied. I said that was my last question on this whole talk. But let's say you give one piece of advice. You've gone through this whole process. You would advise somebody that's interested in pursuing this. What's a piece of advice or a takeaway that you would want to share with somebody else?
Well, I believe, and I alluded to it earlier, but I think number one, you have to make sure your team is on board. Number two, all parties, you have to have full transparency and full conversation with all parties. You have to be patient and you have to listen and learn first, and then, figure out what solutions will make sense. Again, not going at it with, we're going to make all these changes. You want to make sure you're honoring the history and honoring the past, and then also making sure you're building the future of what that can look like. And so for me, it was making sure my team was on board first, because the last thing you want to have is you're going forward and you're doing this deal, but your team's not supporting you. That's not going to work. And when I say team, I mean everyone, like everyone who's involved, the volunteers, the staff, the board. So you need to make sure everybody has that buy-in first. And then you just have to just do it in a gentle way.
Well, I said, well, thank you for sharing all of your wisdom on that front of things. I really appreciate you chatting with me about that, as that's something we're
Yeah.
chatting about internally as well. And then I would love to pick your brain on the foundation, because when we were talking earlier, you're saying that you've got a lot of traction that is happening right now. You've been able to go after some funding opportunities. So yeah, tell me what's going on with your foundation. What's some exciting things happening there?
Yeah. Well, the foundation, one of the things when you have a great team, and I know we've talked about this, we had a foundation established in 2005, and foundations is such a great tool to talk about those other things, other projects, getting involved in the community. Our foundation was originally established to help with a housing study back in 2005. And I always joke with everyone, and they kind of, I don't really joke, but that report that we hired a consultant for, you could actually take 2005 off and put 2025 on there. Some of the stuff is still very relevant, which I find very fascinating. But as kind of going over to Prescott, talking about Prescott for a minute, as we got the team developed and the chamber going on its way, I was able to kind of focus on the foundation piece. And so we put together a strategy that would help support the mission and vision of the chamber. And we started meeting with the businesses and taking a look at that. And we were successful in winning some pretty substantial grants, and I know you have as well, to help with workforce development. And so we put together, and again, in this area, we did not have anybody really focused on regionally what's going on from an economic development and workforce. We are all kind of doing it, but not, but there was no synergy from a regional point of view. And as we've all learned and are learning, is that working together and working regionally and being partners, you can get a lot more teeth. So we were very successful in the 5-year plan. We hired a consultant. We're getting ready to launch that plan next Tuesday. And that is bringing all of us together regionally, which I think is a great tool. The other piece that is an issue in our area, and I know it probably is in a lot of other areas too, is affordability, housing, living. Those folks that are working hard, but they're kind of in that in between. So our foundation was successful in winning a grant for rental assistance. So right now we're currently assisting 21 folks with rental assistance for the next 6 months. We're paying their rent plus any utilities that they have. Of course, they have to qualify. It's a qualified project, but that's been very, very rewarding and really a different hat to play from a chamber foundation point of view. And we also have what's called a minor home repair program, where we help our residents up to $5,000 grant to fix their home. We've had some folks that their water heater wasn't working, or, they needed to have a new deck put on, or, anything that will help them stay in their home and make it more comfortable for them. So those are just examples of what the foundation's been doing. And again, we're getting a lot of traction from that, because those are a lot of the kind of projects that businesses want to support, because they want to give back in a meaningful way. And when you have a strategy and you have a pulse on what the needs are, you can address those through the 501c3 and the partnerships.
So what is that?
So that's been pretty exciting.
Yeah, so those opportunities that you found and identified and explored, like how did that come to your purview, like the rental assistance or the home repair thing? What was the need that was brought to you, and then how did you articulate that need to get some support for it?
Yeah, so the Prescott Cares program actually is still a kind of it started off through COVID, to be honest with you. They were dollars through HUD and through our city. And so then after COVID ended, there was the housing crisis. And so we just kind of worked together to talk about how, with some of the existing dollars that we still had, how would we use those dollars? And so working through HUD, the city, and the foundation, we came up with the rental assistance program. And so that's how that started. And there had been a goal. We were the pilot project for the minor home repair program for quite a while. And, because there's so many people that just don't have the resources, but wanted to be able to have those opportunities to repair some things. And so that's how the minor home repair program started. It was a pilot program, and now it's a pretty permanent program. So
actually we started
just ways to really help yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's great. We started our foundation recently. I've run through some challenges in terms of establishing it, but we're working on it. When it comes to the foundation and like how chambers should think about creating opportunities through their foundation, like it sounds like you guys have had a foundation in place for a long time. Any advice that you have in terms of establishing that foundation? Like, what are the types of things that chambers should be focusing on with their foundation? Give your guidance on that, and let me share what we're working on. We just had our last foundation board meeting, so it's taken like 2 years to get the foundation like actually set up and
Yep.
set up in a way that we needed.
Yeah.
So we haven't really received any funds or done anything like that. But now we're starting to pitched the program the initiative. So what we were looking at was we had heard, and I don't know if this is true or not, but we have a leadership program that we started 3 years ago with some of the grant funds that we got. So we're going into year
Yep.
4 of our leadership program. Part of the talk was we've heard of other chambers that are using their foundation for their leadership collaborative program. So that's the approach, or the first thing that we're planning on working on is using that as an opportunity to receive funds to help support leadership in our region. But I would be curious to know what your advice would be in terms of how I should be using the foundation, or how other chambers should be using the foundation to tackle the things that we do as chambers.
Yeah. So, well, I'll go back to real quickly. You got to hear where I started from. When I was a president of our first chamber, I actually had Fred Meyer himself in Meyer stores. It's kind of a big grocery, kind of like very similar to like your smaller than Costco or Sam's Club, but a grocery store that does all kinds of stuff. And it's more in the Midwest area. And I lived in the community where he had his first store, and he wanted to gift it to our chamber. We couldn't receive that gift. And he wanted us to have it so that we could redevelop it. And that was my first introduction of why chambers are so important. And as I've evolved in the years of it, and kind of in Rochester, we didn't have a foundation. We created one, and now here there was one established. I think the number one thing I would say is make sure it's broad enough so that you can really tackle some of the projects that you want to for your community. One of the things, when I talk about that first story, we couldn't receive that gift, and then we went to the community foundation, and they were limited because they, how they could receive funds, what the funds could be used for. So you want to make sure that your foundation's broad enough in your mission and vision and strategies so that you can adapt it to the projects and things that are the need of your area. A really great example of where we've taken our foundation, we've talked about the housing and all of that, but one of the biggest things, we are Arizona's official Christmas city. And there were 3 or 4 organizations that were putting on these events during the holidays. And we met with them. We sat down and met with them. And we said, well, why don't we work together under the umbrella of the foundation? And the foundation was broad enough to be able to do that because part of our initiative is supporting the community. And so, we have to raise over $400,000 for that. It's all fundraised and grant written. And so merging 3 groups under the foundation and having a dedicated fund to be a pass-through for that, to support that, enhances the community. And here's the takeaway. By doing that, we hired an economist. It's a $52 million economic impact. We create over 500 jobs, and we bring 3 million to the area. That's the impact when you have a broad foundation. And yes, you're absolutely correct. Leadership does fall under that. Workforce training can fall under that. Our historical building falls under that. So keeping that broad enough so that you can really use it to the community's advantage is one big advice that I do give, because that's really important.
Excellent. And I gotta say, my sister, so I think I shared with you this. I tried to stop by to see you in person, but my sister got married in Prescott back in oh gosh, I hope it was May-ish, June, sometime around there. So we didn't get a chance to visit. We went up there a couple of, I think 6 months before in October just to check it out. So it was a great town. We had a great time. We ran into your chamber, probably the volunteers. We ran into the volunteers that had set up a booth at one of the
Yep.
Saturday morning markets or whatever it was. So we got a chance to meet and connect with a lot of your team. And we get the other thing that I'll mention is we get tons of phone calls from the Chino Valley Chamber of Commerce in Arizona. We get some registrations. We get some memberships from Arizona that we have to refund every once in a while. So those are things that are still coming up for us. But I just wanted to say it's been a pleasure serving with you on the board of directors. Is there anything else that you would like to share about your experience working at Prescott Valley or Chino Valley or anything else with our chamber colleagues?
Well, first, I want to say thank you. I'm so sorry that I missed you. And I think recently, didn't you get an email to be part of one of our meetings as well? And I don't know how that happened. I saw that with one of the school boards. But I look forward to coming and visiting you too and seeing all the things that you have going on. I know you have a great background as well, and appreciate your leadership. And I know you've really I think I served on the U.S. Chamber Foundation with one of your colleagues as well. And, I think my parting thing is I just so believe in the chamber brand. And we have such an important role. And I don't think we always get the credit. We're always doing things in the background or sometimes up front when we're bold as leaders, but the we have such an important role, and it's just been such a great journey. And I just encourage everybody that working together, working regionally, working collaboratively is so important. And you can work out all those other details if you all have that trust and you can build that. And it's just so much fun.
Agreed, agreed. It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun. Sheri, thank you so much for chatting with me today. And again, I appreciate all of your guidance and advice and thanks for sharing your wisdom with us.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.